How do you know? How do you really know? Frank W. Abernathy, PhD. So much disinformation, so much censorship, so many gatekeepers, bots, so many distractions, clickbait, bald-faced lies. And now we have AI. So, how do you know? I was born 3 years after World War II. The changes I have seen in my lifetime are mind-boggling. I lived in a time when I could write Jonas Salk a letter, and he actually wrote me back. Who's Jonas Salk? Don't you have AI? Okay, enough with the games, right? Why exactly am I writing all of this? And more importantly, why should you care? Fair enough. This is about the following things: discovery, credibility, importance, reproducibility, sharing. Let's start with discovery. What I'm about to show you are relics of a bygone era. What is that? This, my friends, is 35 millimeter film from 1991 sitting on a light box. There's the color negatives at the top, black and white negative in the middle, and a color slide at the bottom. This is discovery. There's a close-up of the three films. This is credibility. Notice the film numbers above. What's that yellow arrow point to? That's a reference point. So you can compare all three slides, like so, and so. The last image is a bit blurry and washed out. Let's replace it with a scanned image. Much better. Okay, you say, for the sake of argument, I'll give you discovery. But what does any of this have to do with credibility? Good point. I mean, AI could whip this out in mere minutes, right? Well, probably. And what have you discovered anyway? Beaded circles of various sizes that glow greenish yellow. Perhaps it's time to shift gears. As you suggested, let's assume these circles are real as seen under a light UV microscope. Let's assume they really came from the nuclei of mouse cells. I mean, they came from somewhere, right? Assuming all of that, what the H are they? Well, that kind of question definitely begs for an answer, doesn't it? We can create hypotheses and models to try to explain what is happening here based on current knowledge, followed up by laboratory experiments to determine their composition and significance. Doing the latter requires a lab, equipment, and personnel, which requires funding. Or we can make an executive decision. Simply assume they are unworthy of further investigation. Refuse to publicly acknowledge them in any way, shape, or form. Starve them to death by withholding laboratory funding, with one notable exception. One of these photographs received an honorable mention in an Olympus Bioscapes competition in 2011 in Washington, D.C. And there you have it. The top picture is the photograph provided by Olympus Bioscapes, whose name is inscribed on the bottom as shown in the middle picture. The bottom picture is the back of the photograph. The yellow blinking signifies the label placed on the back, which I will read shortly. Serum-arrested mouse L1210 cells engaged in spontaneous apoptosis, programmed cell death, after nutrient depletion and acid hydrolysis. Phase contrast microscopy. Frank Abernathy, Jamestown, Ohio, USA. Honorable mention 2011, Olympus Bioscapes. Digital imaging competition. Well, that was 20 years after their discovery. I have gotten lots of positive responses from laypeople and lots of data downloads from my blog site, evolution4.wordpress.com. My findings have been around the internet for over 30 years now. You would think that some scientists out there, and there's lots of them, would take the time to at least try to reproduce what I did. So what's the problem here? I can only speculate based upon my inability to raise interest in continuing with these studies, much less funding them. So here is my new list. Dogma, territoriality, gatekeeping, fear. Say what? Yep. Let me explain. Dogma, a ploy used by ancient religious groups to maintain their power over the populace. In fact, still used today by the mainstream scientific industrial complex, and for the same reasons. Let me provide an example. DNA in chromosomes contains but a single linear strand of DNA, so they say. Oh, really? Does this look linear to you? All I see are circles. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Time's up. Moving on. Territoriality. It's sad but true. The most successful scientists are incredibly territorial. It's dog eat dog, baby. If you don't want to go hungry, don't share your lunch with others. Moving on. Gatekeeping. This takes many forms, including all the tricks of the internet, like useless email contacts, useless phone numbers, useless contacts, hostile algorithms, hostile bots, fake views, fake likes, fake reviews, fake subscriptions, and of course, AI. It also includes word of mouth and a nebulous thing called peer pressure. But the biggest, rawest, most visceral force in the world of gatekeeping is defined by the word fear. Fear of being ostracized, censored, humiliated, thrown out into the street for questioning the status quo. So the science machine continues to crank out paper after paper, using sheer volume of publications as validation for dogma that keeps them rich and in charge. What happens in the meantime? Discoveries that flirt with even minor changes in dogma are swept under the rug. I know about these things because I lived it, even in labs unrelated to my work, which means I have peer-reviewed publications. unrelated to my PhD work. In other words, I did somebody else's research. And here are the papers. I would have many more of these papers had Grant not been pulled and I hadn't grown old. Well, on to the next slide. Importance. How can we tell if new discoveries may be important? There's only one way. Reproducibility. They must be reproduced in other laboratories. Sharing. They must be studied worldwide. Models explaining how they work and their significance must be created and experimentally validated. This I have tried to do, see blog, etc. To do otherwise is anti-science, and it can lead to serious consequences, like failing to treat diseases properly. Which side of history will you be on? Visit evolution4.wordpress.com. Write to me, fabernathy@mail.com. Thank you for watching this video.